Okay.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to begin by welcoming those members of the public and the press who are watching this live stream of this meeting via the Combined Authorities website. Due to government guidance on social distancing, this meeting is being held remotely in accordance with the local authorities, police and crime commissioners panel, flexibility of local authorities, which allows you to choose a name when you join this meeting. Members of the public, if you do not want to be identified, please choose a different name. I can't pronounce that one. Recording of the meeting will be available to view on the meetings page of the Combined Authorities website. To enable the meeting to run in an orderly manner, I would ask all members of the committee to keep their video cameras switched on for the duration of the meeting and keep their microphones muted except when they're invited to speak. Officers will join us to introduce their reports in the usual way, and members wishing to ask questions to make comments should indicate by clicking and raising the hand function on the right hand side of your screen. When I invite you to speak, please unmute your microphone, ask your question, and then mute it again to allow officers to respond. As with all new arrangements, especially these involving new systems, there is always a risk that it may run into technical problems. If so, I'd ask you to be patient. I would remind members and officers that all virtual meetings are recorded. Okay, so we now have to do a roll call. Are you going to do that, Tamar?
Yes, I can do that for you. Do we have Councillor David Ambrose-Smith?
Present.
Councillor Mike Davey?
Present.
Councillor Liz Every?
Present.
Councillor John Naish?
Present.
Councillor Chris Seaton?
Present.
Councillor Eileen Wilson?
Present.
And Councillor John Holditch?
Present.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Do we have any apologies for absence?
No apologies for absence.
Does any member wish to declare or any disclosable pecuniary interest or non-statutory disclosable interest? Please tick or raise your hand function on the right hand of the screen now if you wish to declare any interest. Councillor, oh, no. I don't have anybody. Councillor Seaton?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. As usual, I must declare that my wife works for the College of West Anglia in the apprenticeship department.
Okay. I don't think that gives you any particular interest to this agenda, does it? Certainly not pecuniary ones, anyway.
I don't think so, but I think it's wise just to make the point.
Okay, members, please note that I formally propose to remove item 3.2, the skills brokerage contract extension report, from the agenda. Given the contract expires on the 30th of June, it would have been reasonable to await the outcome of a meeting and decision made on this item. Accordingly, this matter was dealt with by officer decision. Notice that the decision will be published on the Combined Authorities website, and decisions relating to the contract of this value fall within the delegated authority of the director and the business of the skills accordingly. This item has been therefore withdrawn from today's agenda. Thank you. Okay, item 1.2. We are being asked to approve the minutes of the meeting of the 27th of April as the correct record. Can I ask if members agree that they are a correct record? Can I take it as I've got no objection, say are a correct record, Tamar, or do you want people to vote?
Agreed.
Agreed. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I see no objections, so we'll move on. Okay. On the basis that the committee members are happy to approve the minutes as written, subject to any changes, again, I would ask anybody who objects to use them raise their hands now as indicated. On that basis, the recommendation to approve the minutes is carried, and I will sign the hard copy and return to the office. On 1.3, we've received a number of questions from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, a copy of which has been circulated electronically to all members of the committee in advance of the meeting. I will now read the questions in response at the start of the relevant items on the agenda. Okay. Okay, do the committee have any comments on the agenda plan? I'll take it of the silence, there isn't any. Okay. Any comments on the Combined Authorities Forward Plan? No, nobody indicating. So this is the report to the board of the university final business case for Peterborough. So I'll hand over to Kim Cook, or are you going to take it, John?
Oh, Councillor Holditch, we need to read
got a
the question first.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, sorry. Yeah,
So
okay.
I'll read the question from Overview and Scrutiny Committee. So in paragraph 2.5, additional curriculum areas from the university have been identified as a result of the university programme and the post-COVID-19 skills recovery plan are listed as engineering, manufacturing and advanced materials, logistics and distribution and life sciences. Please could we see the evidence supporting the necessity for these curriculum additions?
Okay, and the response to that is the evidence supporting these curriculum additions is set out in the local industrial strategy and the skills strategy as a priority area in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Independent Economic Review. It was the original intention that these areas of the curriculum would be part of the additional curriculum areas to be offered within phase 3. However, with COVID-19, it may be necessary to revisit and redefine the need basis on the evidence from the Integrated Business and Skills Review to identify the skills gaps created by the pandemic. Okay, the report and appendices for this item were not available to members of the public dated 26th of June. With my agreement, the report and appendices were published once available, which is Monday the 29th of June 1920. Okay. We've been asked to approve the minutes of the 27th of April as a correct record. So I've got over 2 pages, haven't I? Good. Could we now ask Kim Cook to introduce this report? Kim, over to you.
Excellent. Good afternoon all. Thank you, Chair. The report in front of you is the culmination of the full business case for the phase 1 of the University of Peterborough. And we're asking you to approve the report, the full business case, and everything, all the details defined therein, as well as obviously delegating authority to John Hill, the Director of Business and Skills, in order to finalise all the legalised paperwork that we need to put together in order to move forward with the Peterborough HE Property Company and pulling the whole project together. So basically, the full business case has been written from the approval of the outline business case in January, and the full business case, I'm hoping you'll agree, sets out the business model, the operating model, the procurement of the HE partner, although obviously the announcement for the HE partner will be next week on the 14th of July. It also discusses the procurement for the main contractor and all the works that need to be done in order to mobilise that phase 1 project within the time frame, which is over the next 2 years, basically. So we're asking for approval, I guess. Well, not guess, definitely.
Yeah, right.
With a full business case. So the milestones are therein, but happy to answer any questions. We're obviously, as I say, launching the HE partner next Tuesday. The planning submission is going in next week, the week after. And we've had a lot of interest from people to build phase 1 for us. So I'm very happy to take questions on the full business case, the operating model and the curriculum therein.
Okay, John T, did you want to add anything to that?
Thank you, Chair. All I would like to add is that as a result of COVID pandemic and the disruption to the higher education market sector in general, the combined authority, its consultants in education and education delivery models, MACE, and the selected HE delivery partner have spent around 6-7 weeks working through and reworking their business models and their curriculum to make it, to basically stress test it for COVID in a post-COVID educational and recessional environment. And that can be found on page 62, that piece of work. And it goes into some depth to provide reassurance that this particular business model with this particular performer or partner, and this is probably the best combination to withstand the post-COVID impacts. Reasons include that this particular performer, which we can't announce yet, has very low exposure to international students, which is the main impact for most universities on their business models. This particular university has very low, 5% of their income, in fact, comes from international students, so they're relatively robust. The other key reason amongst half a dozen or so is that this particular partner has already been working towards remote learning and blended learning systems. So their need for a step into that type of learning and a much lower intensity, physical intensity of students on campus was a much smaller step for them than most other universities. And then finally, the business model itself is a very low on-campus model. Kim will probably tell me the right number, but I think it's something like 20-25% of students are on campus at any one time. So the actual model of the delivery, by luck, was very COVID compliant and COVID withstanding, in that it's not a high intensity physical model within a building. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Members, over to you. I've got Councillor Seaton. You're away, Chris.
Am I there? Yeah, I'm okay. Yes, in part it has been answered, Chairman, but because this is a very involved business case, quite rightly so, it does take quite a lot of work to drill down into it. I just want assurance that from the officers, and we do rely on them heavily in this area, that you know, that everything has been tested and tested again to make sure this business case stacks up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, to answer Councillor Seaton and to reassure you, the answer is a definite yes. As John's already sort of alluded to, we have gone through the COVID stress test, but also we've spoken to them around their business model and their commercial viability. The fact that this university is predicated on digitalization and technologies, it sort of put us ahead of the curve really before the pandemic, and it sort of enables that particular delivery partner to be quite lean with their use of staff and the way they deliver, and sort of bearing in mind as well that a lot of the work that they will, or a lot of the curricula will be in work curricula around degree apprenticeships and higher level apprenticeships as well. So that's sort of, it's not going to be a campus model per se based on sort of the Robbins universities of the 60s. We are looking for this forward thinking, in work, digital way of delivery. And that's how the whole thing was written pre-COVID. And it seems to be coming into its own post-COVID. Well, whenever that comes, you know.
Thank you, Kim.
Thank you,
Councillor
Chairman.
Edry.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Edry.
He's on mute.
That's all right. Thank you very much indeed. just wanted to refer back to the recruitment program, because we've talked about this before.
Yeah.
And how the business model relies on a lot of local people coming through. So I've got a couple of things I wanted to do. Obviously, the youngsters going to come through who are going to go post year 13 will be our COVID youngsters.
Yeah.
Who are going through this process, and we must expect over the next 2 years that those years 9, 10 and 11 are going to have a difficult time educationally, catching up on what's actually happened. So I was just wondering how you're going to manage that process, but also it's not just our local people. The second question was, you know, apprenticeships are also in a bit of a flux at the moment, inevitably. And if you're going to rely on the higher end, you're looking at obviously that, you know, those youngsters again. And the third really was that how then do you widen that capture of recruitments, because you're recruiting, because it's not going to be enough just locally. So I know that you have a new model and a UCP, but now. Or UCP, you know, what am I thinking of?
Whoever they are.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
That wider thing, because you have got a unique product,
Yeah.
haven't you? And
Yeah,
it works.
definitely.
Just the synergy of getting all those numbers so that hits your business plan model.
Yeah. Okay. So to answer that then, Councillor Every, obviously, the university provider that we're going to work with has just launched as well something called almost like access to HE, because what you are absolutely right. What we're looking at is young people that will be coming into sixth form as well, with maybe not the right grades and maybe not the right qualifications in order for their next step due to the COVID pandemic, because we're not sure how long that's going to last and the implications it's going to have. So obviously this HE partner that we're talking to are very strong as well with widening participation and improving social mobility. They have an above average sort of percentage. They have increased the percentage of participation within the east of England. They're one of the leaders within that. Although we're still slightly behind, you know, the rest of England, they have really strong outreach programs. Obviously, we have the Careers and Enterprise Company that will support us throughout the region with promotions and careers, and the enterprise advisors that you know well, that are all part and parcel of that. Is the business link as well, isn't it, into yes. schools and everything else. But from the apprenticeship and the traineeship viewpoint, I know that Fiona will follow the call shortly, but there is, you know, there's been sort of some good news coming out that we're hoping to get sort of bursaries and support with apprenticeships, definitely bursaries into further training into midwifery and nursing. And of course, that is one of the faculties within the new university, is to support the growth and the sort of retraining and the redevelopment of the NHS as well, because that's obviously going to be severely impacted by this COVID pandemic. But you know, I do think that this university will not be the only one in the country to put on the access to HE. We used to have it years ago in FE, but I think this is a sort of a stepping up. You can almost do a foundation degree if your A levels don't quite make the grade. And that's the other thing we're looking at, is student confidence, isn't it? We know a lot of young people, 18, want to go away, they want to go to party town, and which may be Newcastle or Manchester, I don't know. But this university is predicated on the local demographic, and we may see more youngsters from our local demographic not willing to go away and leave home, either financially or even through having the confidence to do so. So I think that will also drive up student demand. But we've got 2 years of a very, very strong campaign that we're currently refining with the HE partner. But they do have the tools and they do have the experience to widen the participation that will be needed in order to drive up those student numbers.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
No worries.
All right.
Have we lost Councillor Holditch? Or is it me?
Councillor Wilson? Have you lost me, Kip?
We lost you.
We
yeah.
lost you for a while.
Councillor Wilson, please.
My question relates to the Office for Students. When are we likely to know from the Office for Students whether this project is actually getting the go-ahead? And if a lot of universities are in difficulty at the moment because of the post-COVID situation or the COVID situation,
Yeah.
and if by any chance they decided that it couldn't go ahead, how much are the different partners putting at risk in the startup costs? Because I note from paragraph 722 that the delivery partner is actually putting a substantial amount of funding into the startup costs. So, well, what are the risks there for the various parties, and how much would the combined authority be at risk if this just happened to not come off?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, the Office for Students are very excited by this product because it is new, it is innovative, it's creative, it's a you know, based on work placements, it's based on technical and vocational courses and qualifications. So the feedback we've had anecdotally is that they are, you know, sort of gonna endorse and support, but you're absolutely right. The HE partner that we're working with will obviously cover off the Office for Students and the registration. It will be run as a sort of birth midwifery model, if you like, for the first 3 years, before we can obviously start to apply for our own degree awarding powers. And we've got an independent review in 2028 with the sort of University of Peterborough hoping to sort of reach independence sort of thereafter and before 2032. So within that full business case was a roadmap on how we're going to achieve the milestones that we need to achieve. But Councillor Wilson, I totally take on board what you're saying about the universities and the fact that the Office for Students are going to be looking quite scrutinised, aren't they, what's going to happen. And actually a new kid on the block might not be something that they in sort of ordinary times would be something that they are advocating, in the fact that the HE marketplace and the landscape is probably overpopulated already. However, because of the nature of this model, they're very excited. The HE partner have spoken with them direct, and it could well be something that sort of it's definitely a model that we will see other universities following, so they're watching it very keenly from conception.
Absolutely. Okay. Happy with that, Councillor Wilson?
I think John wanted to add.
John? Go on, John.
Just a very small addition there. In fact, it is the Office of Students that are quite interested in this particular model and this particular player and how they're behaving. One of the things the OFS is expecting is mergers amongst universities in this post-COVID period. And in some ways that is actually what's happening here, in that we've got a university that's already got 3 campuses creating another university, so that this is actually within the OFS long-term strategy to see a smaller number of players that are more robust, delivering in more places. So this is actually straight down the line of what they're looking to do. And of course, this university partner has degree awarding powers anyway. So there's no new permissions needed from the OFS. That will come in 2028 when we actually do the independence review and decide, do we want something called the University of Peterborough? And if we do, then that has to come away from this provider at that point.
Yeah.
And there's a roadmap that has been worked out with the OFS that gets us there.
Yeah, thank you.
Very modern term, isn't it? This roadmap business. Okay, yeah. I think we're going to Jerusalem or somewhere. Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Chair. My question is the timing of this meeting is rather sad because it would be nice if it'd been after next Tuesday when we'd have
I
known.
know.
I realise that's unfortunate, but that, oddly enough, does mean we can focus upon the questions that require asking, I suppose. Yeah. And the issue for me is linked to Councillor Wilson's comment. So it's a kind of combination of 722 and also 336, which is about the transactional contracts between ourselves and the. So the issue for me, bearing in mind all that's been said, is what will be the scrutiny of those contracts? Because if they're happening before the end of August, that doesn't give a great deal of time for us to just, given all the uncertainties involved, how are we going to just monitor that and be reassured as a committee, or indeed, if it's not this committee, a different committee? So it's really about just the oversight, I think, is what I'm asking. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so the transactional documents we have been working on for about 6 to 9 months now, and actually, because we had a negotiated procurement process, we were able to work up those transactional documents with the HE partner through the procurement process. But you're absolutely right. So I guess what we're asking here is about scrutiny and monitoring. What goes into those transactional documents, or oversight?
Sorry, Kim, maybe given what you've just said, I'm sure it's been negotiated over 9 months. COVID started in March.
Yes.
So how have you been able to adapt those transactional contracts, which I'm sure you have been, but it's then, how's that then scrutinised, bearing in mind that the contracts will be signed at the end of August? And it's that combination, I think, which I appreciate. It's really tricky stuff, but it's just to make sure that...
yeah, very true, actually. Yeah.
Hang a minute, Kim. I'm going to get John to answer that because he's been through a process with the business board on some reinsurance.
Okay.
John?
Yes, thanks for that, Chair. Yes, the business board, as Councillor Holditch said, asked us to look at a number of things in terms of post-COVID stress testing, both the business model and the documents themselves and the deals that were done, and whether they needed to be flexed in any way. I think the first answer to your question is, in September, we can come back to you with these documents for you to look at. We are also, by the way, in front of these overview and scrutiny committee around the university in September as well. So we can include these documents there as well. They will be signed, it is true, before those 2 opportunities for you to see them. But what I would point out, not least because of the amount of money that the CPCA and the business board through the local growth fund has invested, we are by far the majority shareholder. So being the majority shareholder, we do have some flexibilities for the renegotiation if there is something that you're not happy with. But what I would say is that these are the result of a long negotiating period with lawyers sitting on both sides of the table. So there are hundreds of person hours gone into this thing. So we have taken a great deal of care over it, but scrutiny can be provided in September, both here and in Overview and Scrutiny Committee.
Thank you. Thank
you, Chair. Most of my questions have been answered, so thankfully I won't keep it too long. There was an interesting one you talked about roadmaps. I thought we were on sat-navs and beyond that nowadays. Be on our iPhones and anyway, just to bring. I mean, I'm obviously fairly new into this, and it's been going on for a long while, and I do understand that. I still have slight concerns, not necessarily with the business case, but well, I suppose it is the business case really of how you're going to grab in, especially with COVID-19 issues with the local businesses, and how far out you're going to go, those local businesses, looking into Huntingdonshire, East Cambs, South Cambs, and maybe City, who knows as far as that. So I do have little concerns there, but that does make it a USB as well. And I think it is exciting. I think it's got its unique challenges as well. Yeah. But my major concern, I suppose, is because it is unique, is to actually manage to keep it up and running and going. But overall, I actually do see that there's, you know, I'm pleased to hear the scrutiny is going to chase some of those areas, because there's always going to be that bit which we hopefully don't miss, but you never know. And I'm very pleased that, you know, we are looking at the local demographics. I just still have a concern as to how far you're going out of Peterborough, should we say, because it does very much seem to focus on Peterborough, and I know that's not what you want.
No, absolutely not.
And it's sort of really trying to push it further out, and dare I say, a bit further north to that place called Lincolnshire, maybe in Northamptonshire. Northampton's fine, because, you know, I do fly the flag for Northamptonshire. But,
absolutely. John, do you want to answer this?
I think you
have your
forgot
hand
Finland,
up?
John.
All right, John, do you want to answer that?
Yes, thank you. If I could start, and I'm sure Kim will give some more colour to what I'm about to say. The business board have got as much skin in the game as the CPCA. 12.3 million from the CPCA Gain Share Fund and 12.5 from the business board through the local growth fund. And in fact, it was the business board that asked us to do a really deep dive. And one of the one of the early criticisms of the business board on this project and what they had seen of the delivery partner was a lack of business and industry engagement. Now, when we interrogated that, it basically turned out to be a byproduct of the procurement process, in that they can't go and talk to businesses, well, until next Tuesday. They can't actually go and talk to businesses about the fantastic offer they've got. So what we did is we interrogated their business engagement plan, and they came back to us with a very comprehensive and sophisticated business engagement plan. And although I can't say who they are, one must remember that this is a university that is one of the top universities for business engagement and business as customers in the country. They are the #1 for business apprenticeships in the country. And they have shown us a very, very sophisticated business engagement program in terms of geographic reach and sectoral spread. And yes, it goes well beyond Stamford and Lincolnshire and out to Rutland and further on to Northamptonshire, and of course in the other directions as well. But as an ex-business developer myself, it is a very, very sophisticated pitch to businesses in terms of really understanding what the businesses want in a post-COVID recovery environment. And they are very used to flexing their offer to what the business is telling them. So their methodology is to go out to businesses, ask them what they want, and then pretty much design curriculum and courses around what the businesses want. They are very, very flexible. And as such are quite an unusual university, most of which say, this is the menu of things you can have, take it or leave it. So that they have a wide business reach and a very sophisticated approach.
Indeed. Okay, Councillor Seaton, you're back again, yeah?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'm sure it was just a minor aberration.
I knew you were. What about Finland?
I forgot to mention Finland. You know, he mentioned everywhere in the country apart from Finland. I thought I'd just make that point, Chairman.
Yeah, well done, Chris. I noticed that as well.
It's because you're so close.
Can I add? I was most definitely going to mention Finland, but obviously sort of John was very, very helpful and sort of mentioned that first as well. The Finland, the sort of the North Huntingdonshire, the sort of harder to reach, the social mobility, the widening participation, it's all that there, it's on their agenda. And actually, John's already alluded to the fact that this particular HE partner is very strong in sort of bespoke standards within apprenticeships and defining bespoke courses for businesses, and sort of, you know, driving up cohorts of students that sort of ordinarily may not usually be your typical HE partner, your HE student. So, you know, underrepresented groups, first generation into HE, the unemployed, the sort of those that sort of take redundancy out of the back of this pandemic, and the National Retraining Scheme all go hand in hand. And this particular HE partner is experienced and very used to being agile and flexing their curriculum to meet the business needs in Finland.
All right, Chris. Well made. Yeah. I have to say, it was probably 3 years ago when I was working on this. Greed, who are an international company, came to me and said, "You're building a university 10 years out of date, Holditch." And this is just what they were advocating as without COVID, as the universities of the future as well. So I haven't got anybody else. Oh, sorry, I have Councillor Wilson.
So it's just a final question. After what we've been hearing, will, when it starts up, will the University of Peterborough have its own identity, or will it just be a new campus for the delivery partner?
Okay, I'll let John answer that.
Yeah, it's a very good question, Councillor Wilson. It's quite a long answer, but I'm going to give a short version of it. It swings and roundabouts. The whole point of the midwife model is that you're not relying on a low-resourced, both in terms of the IP for courses and finance, FE model to step up. You're actually going to an existing university. So for the first 3, 5, 6, maybe 7 years, there are massive benefits with going with an established player with a strong balance sheet, money to invest, and this one's investing up to £6.5 million, plus another 5 million in the operating model, but also in intellectual property in terms of the courses. So actually having the midwife model where you are using another university to birth yours has massive early year benefits. However, there comes a point, and we've pitched that at about 5 years in, maybe 6 years in 2028, 29 sort of period, where you can actually review it and say, well, let's balance off those benefits. What are the remaining, or what are the benefits of remaining with this player going forward, because we'll want to see the university developing more and further. And what are the benefits of putting the apron strings, going independent, but losing your intellectual property access and losing some financial benefits? So I think it's a question for us in 28, 29, and who knows what the answer we would come up with. I don't think the benefits of having the name necessarily are ultimately paramount. There may be other benefits that balance that off. Just one last thing: the partner in the frame is a very innovative one, and they've got the Office of Students. I can't say too much on this, but they've got the Office of Students into such a position where they've got a roadmap whereby they could stay involved, give access to their intellectual property and their balance sheet and their funding, and we still get the name. We don't, there is a possibility you don't have to be 100% independent to get the name. And that would, in my view, be the absolute best balance. You get the name, but you still get a big brother partner behind you.
Okay. After nobody else indicating, is it you wish to approve the recommendations as set out in the second page of your paper? So did you want me to read them? But you've all had the papers. I guess that you're in a position to vote. Do I have any objections? Is that the best way of doing it? No. Can I then take that's unanimous? Are you happy with that, Michelle?
Thank you, Councillor Holditch. I do just appreciate a proposer and a seconder, please.
Okay. Can I have a proposer and a seconder then? Better not be me, yeah? Right. I've got loads now. The first one up was Councillor Seaton. Second one was Councillor Ambrose Smith. Councillor Seaton, are you proposing? And David, are you seconded?
Happy to do so.
That's right, Chairman, yeah.
Thank you very much, sir. Okay, you're now content? Yeah? Can I now move on then? Thank you very much. Okay. You don't want me to go through all individually then? Right. No, okay. So we've agreed that unanimously. Thank you very much for that. We'll now move to 2.2. And there's a question on this, I think, Tamar?
So I'll read the question out. The CEC contract was terminated and was being allowed to wither on the vine prior to the review. Why is there now confidence in the performance of the CEC and a view that it is one of the best performing when figures in the attached report show below average performance? There are a number of questions below. On page 24 of the report highlights good levels of engagement with schools in the authority area, above average, but satisfaction measures of EAs with their coordinators is at 71%, some 19% below the network average. Why is this significantly lower, and why is the target set at 70%? On page 25, Compass provision is fractionally below the national average on all metrics. What is being done to improve the Compass provision over the remainder of the CEC contract? And on page 26, the Gatsby benchmarking shows our performance is slightly below the national average. What stretching targets have been set for the CEC under the extended contract to improve the local performance?
Okay. My response to that is the CEC contract was scaled down from October 18 in the run-up to the contract terminating in March 19. There was only an enterprise coordinator supporting the contract instead of 4. Since May 19, the CEC contract has redeployed into a brokerage contract. Due to the lost time, benchmarking against the national picture is slightly below the national average, as other LEP/CAs have no breaks in their contract. The CEC, in their review of their changes, are happy with the performance given to standstill that the contract was at. There is a preferred, this is referred to in the Skills Committee paper under Section 5, feedback from the CEC regional lead on progress. Satisfaction levels with the enterprise advisor are lower than expected, reflecting survey results of those employers who are not supported by the enterprise coordinator in previous years. With reference to one of the highest performing areas, with reference to the opportunity area of Fenland and East Cambs, where the enterprise coordinator was active during the whole period of the contract, it's now remarked on 2 occasions that the EC had exceeded the target set out and reached the 3-year target for employer encounters with students in 2 years instead of 3. We have been using the enterprise coordinator for the opportunity area as an exemplar to support the ECs across the area, which has been effective. Compass scores are being monitored monthly and are expected to stay at the current level during the pandemic until schools return. There has been additional masterclass training delivered by the CEC to schools and careers leaders during the lockdown period, which should help with the increasing those benchmarks further. Additional activities against each benchmark is also being carried out to utilise in time effectively with schools for this period, reflecting those priorities. Thank you very much. Now, can I ask Fiona McGonigal to introduce the report, please?
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Board. So the Creative Enterprise Company contract review was an annual review based around the review of the decision made by the Skills Committee and Combined Authority Board last year to ask if we could come back a year later and review our decision to redeploy the contract into our skills brokerage teams. So the Skills Committee is asked to note the annual review applicable to the decision made by the Combined Authority Board on the 29th of May last year, to retain the Careers Enterprise Company contract a year on. To also note the update on the decision made on the management and delivery of the Careers and Enterprise contract on the 29th of May 2019, and to recommend the annual report to the Combined Authority Board, which is the benchmarking for the current contract to date.
Thank you, Fiona. Councillor Edrick.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, Fiona. Good to see you. I appreciate that this is the annual review of what happened last year. I am very concerned about what's going to happen next. And I was wondering when we would have some update, this board would have some update about what the actions are as we come through COVID and outside, because it's a very, very difficult time for schools, as we know, and they're not all back, etc. So it would be useful to have some kind of COVID indication of the forward planning and the action plan, and perhaps even more importantly, how the EAs are going to fit into that, bearing in mind that we don't necessarily have the access that we had before. So I think, I mean, it's the same for everybody, and I get that. But bearing in mind we're slightly below average now, I wouldn't want to see that get worse over the next 12 months.
Fiona.
Thank you, Councillor Every. I note your concerns. We do have those same concerns. I have monthly contract meetings with our brokerage teams, but also with the CEC regional lead, who has advised that the national picture for all of the enterprise advisors and the CEC contract nationally has taken a bit of a knock in areas. We've been quite fortunate to keep progress going in that time. At the time when we went into lockdown, I did expect that we would go at a standstill and not much would happen. However, as you being an enterprise advisor and of course being an advocate and working very closely with schools and as a chair, as a board governor within schools, you'll know that in this period of pause and reflection, we've been very lucky to actually have the careers leaders who would normally be in the class teaching, having those dual roles, available now to speak with our enterprise coordinators. And in doing so, putting the plan in place for the next academic year. So it's actually putting us ahead of the game, whereas before we would have had that fight to try and gain their time, because time was an important commodity to them. So we've been maximising on that and using the team wisely on that. And as you're probably aware, we are also taking on an additional 17 SEND schools, which is your special educational needs schools and alternative provision. We've already put team training in place. Alvina in the team, who's our SEND specialist, had a 4-day training last week in order to get the team prepared in readiness for the summer months for starting that new contract in September. So we have been doing a lot of work in the background, try and maximise on the time that we've got and the actual capacity that we've got with those careers leaders. So we do take on board the concern there, but we actually are mitigating that by using the time wisely and making sure that the contract is still firing on in many cases, and in some cases where it's slowing down with the enterprise advisor engagement. We have had 2 enterprise advisors, because of their own personal circumstances with business, I think redundancy and stuff, have had to say to us that they've had to put it on hold, that they can't be enterprise advisors at present. But because we've done that, we've actually found replacements already straight away, because businesses are still wanting to support where they can at this period. So we're quite fortunate. So I definitely note that, but I would be very happy to, when we get into the next academic year, bring a report back to board to show what the forward plan will look like and what we have done over the summer months and what we will be doing.
I think that's great. Thank you, Chair, through the Chair. Thank you, Fiona. That would be really, really helpful. The last thing we need is this momentum to decrease, because it's such an important area. And for our youngsters currently going through some quite difficult times, it's even more important.
Agree.
Yes, I completely agree. Sorry, can I just add to that, Chair, if that's okay? We also have RAND Europe through Cambridge Ahead and ourselves as the Combined Authority. We have supported commissioning of a careers guidance report, and that evidence is going to be presented with John T. Hill, the Mayor, Kim Sawyer and our senior team next Monday. in terms of what careers guidance looks like. That research was done pre-COVID, but we'd like to do an addendum to that to show that what COVID is like now post that research being done. And that's going to be presented because we recognise this area needs a lot more in terms of that careers guidance, but it's going to be needed more than ever in terms of supporting any potential needs that we have. So whatever we can do to try and mitigate that is something that we have done that research, and we'll use that as recommendations to as a solution.
Right, Councillor David.
Was that me, Chair? Sorry.
Who's that?
No,
Chair?
Councillor David.
Oh.
Sorry? Is that me, Chair? Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Yeah. Yes, that's you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Like Councillor Coles in his question, slightly concerned about below national average, if I'm honest, Fiona, and it would be helpful to have context about how we perform against like authorities, because clearly I know Cambridgeshire and Peterborough is quite a mixture, but it's therefore to get some perspective in relation to what authorities might be similar to us, which then gives us perhaps a more accurate reflection as to how we are. And I wonder if you could comment particularly on, in terms of some of the benchmarking data, the two that I suppose sprung to my mind was that under the benchmarks achieved partially or not achieved within the LEP area, encounters with employees and employers, in some cases, I think it's 45%, there aren't any. And in terms of personal guidance, again, there's a gap, appears to be of about 20%. And I just wondered if you had any comments at all about that, because that would strike me as worrying, bearing in mind the sort of environment we're likely to be marching into post-COVID. Thank you, Fiona. Thank you, Chair.
Fiona.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Davey. With regards to your earlier point, and just as a clarification, the reason why we are slightly behind on benchmarks, and we're just slightly under the average benchmark in many of it, is because the contract was almost paused with only one enterprise coordinator carrying out the activity, whereas 3 were missing from that. So in comparison to other LEPs and combined authorities, I think we've done well in the period to try and catch up on that. So we working with the CEC every month to make sure that they're happy with progress. We've set in monthly targets. The teams have achieved that. So we had a year of almost no activity in certain parts of our geography, apart from Fenelon and East Cams. And that's why we note that the Fenelon and East Cams opportunity area has been deemed as one of the higher performing out of the 12 opportunity areas in the country, which we're very proud of, because our enterprise coordinator has carried out a lot of that activity through that whole period where there was none in the rest of the area. So we're wanting to maintain that momentum that we've gathered. We don't want to lose that. That's why we're using these months now to work with those careers leaders, work with the skills and businesses to do that. And with regards to the benchmarking, you made reference to the careers guidance, which is great. And with my previous point, that's why we have commissioned this piece of RAND research work for careers guidance, because we recognise it's a major gap in our schools. We don't always have the availability within schools that they have access to a careers guidance person, because they need to be at that level 6 or above trained. A lot of schools, 1, can't afford one, or 2, they've got maybe an English teacher, maths teacher, or someone like that doing it as an add-on, which Councillor Every will also add to that, because I know she's very informed on working within schools in that. But we are wanting to see what we can do in terms of gathering that research and what recommendations we would have. And of course, recommendation is that all schools have access to careers guidance now more than ever, because we know that the careers landscape and the labour market is going to look particularly different. And that's why we're mitigating that against and working closely with our data team to look and see, well, what growth sectors are there, and what sectors that we want to be directing young people to where the jobs are, instead of getting them to do A-levels or degrees in a course that's not going to get them a job. So we're working hard in the background to do that. I hope that answered all your questions, Councillor Davies.
Yeah, I suppose it's linked to Councillor Avery. It's about wanting to see the plan for the future. So when presumably after the commissioned work's done, we'll get to see that in due course. Fiona, would that be right?
Yes, if it's okay with the chair and Tamar, we'd be very happy to send that that research out to the group so that you're not delayed in receiving that research. Once we present that to our senior team, including John T. Hill, next Monday in the Mayor, and that research is passed, we can then send that to the board ahead of any other skills committee, so that you can see what those recommendations are.
That'd be great. Thank you, Chair.
Good idea, yeah. Councillor Nish?
Thank you, Chair. My one goes back to a previous Freudian slip on Fairland, in that I think the contract clearly states in that we've currently got that the resources were dispensed across Peterborough City, South Cambs, Cambridge City, and it also mentions, if I remember rightly, the opportunity areas of Fenland and East Cambs, but it seems to forget one other particular area. Which
So where's that?
Hang on. Huntingdonshire. Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your So I just wondered, what evidence is there to say, what benefits this contract and future benefits are going to have in Huntingdonshire, but more across the whole area, so that maybe the KPIs can actually give that indication of what individual areas are actually, benefiting from it. So we actually do know, because obviously we do come back to being a bit parochial sometimes, don't we? And really, I suppose that's my question, is actually looking at for future, is actually really demonstrating across the board how each individual area does benefit it, because I think that helps us all in our own areas. I think if you look at the annual data review, maybe the KPIs could add each individual district in there just to show it all. I just think that's my one area there. I mean, especially if you're looking at skills for post COVID, in that we really need to look ahead on that one and make sure each area. I mean, we're looking at potentially 2,500 to 9,000 sort of unemployment coming up in just Huntingdonshire alone. We've all going to have potentially those same issues, and I think it's vitally important that we keep an eye on all skills for all areas. Thank you, Chair, and I think I managed to mention all districts that time.
Oh, well done. Fiona?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Nish. Well, it would please you to know that we do have that drill down data. The CEC annual report just comes from the CEC in terms of that top level data, so we can certainly give sight of the individual data for each school, how they're performing, but we will just have to ask permission because of course the schools, it's their data and they don't readily want everyone to see it. Some schools are happy to share it because of data protection, so that's why we just give the high level piece, but we can certainly look and see if the schools are happy for us to share that with the board. Then we can give that drill down data for each of the local authorities. And with regards to skills and being left behind, I'm working very, very actively with every local authority, with all of the economic development teams. I had a meeting last week with your economic development team in terms of what we can do for that skills and employability piece. They're connected in with the talent portal that we launched and the retraining scheme, and we're looking to be front and centre, working closely with economic development teams to see which businesses are growing and which businesses might be having some potential redundancies, so that we can work very closely with those teams to pick up the pieces in terms of where that is. And of course, equal to that, then also working closely with the schools to ensure that we're not creating any more needs. We're trying to keep students engaged and in schools and looking at that, what that picture is as well.
Thank you very much for that. And I do think the data would be helpful, specifically at officer level as well. Thank you.
Thank you, John. David, did you want to come back?
Is this David or Davey? David?
David Ambrose Smith.
Yeah, David, that's fine. Yes.
Yeah.
Fiona, the contract, if I've read it right, is only to August 21. Is that right? The extension?
Yes, because of the situation in the landscape that we're in, the funding comes from the Department for Education. We are also having weekly meetings, and I've got one at 4 o'clock today with the Department for Education on a skills and recovery package. And so before, we've had 2-year funding before. However, this year they've just said 1 year because they're looking to review activity, and the CEC have been under scrutiny previously in terms of how they're spending that money. So I think that the CEC weren't in the position to award 2 years on this instance. But we know through that work, it's been seen as very strategic and important work, that it will be. And Nicky Morgan, who was the previous, Nicky Morgan MP, who was the previous skills minister, has now just joined the CEC board last week. So she's front and centre in terms of pushing and driving that forward. So that's where we are at the moment, but I expect that funding to continue for the next foreseeable.
But it is for only 1 year. So being for 1 year, it gives us a chance to review what in front of us is some very poor figures as far as I'm concerned. I know you're doing all what you've done to get over this, but I think a 1 year test is effectively what we're giving this company. So it pleases me that we can actually see if all the things you're putting in place will in fact improve what are very, very poor results in front of us. Thank you.
Right, I think that's a fair comment, Dave.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Ambrose. I would agree with that, and I have full confidence that with the momentum we've gathered from quite a standing stop with part of the area, that we will certainly continue with that momentum. Even though it's going to be a post-COVID world, I expect to see that rise within the next few months, so to increase. But very happy to take that update back to the board for that.
Okay. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. I recall when this contract was sort of withering on the vine, so to speak. It was because of little poor performance, but the contract was maintained, if I recall correctly, because there wasn't an alternative partner in the offing. Are there other partners that could be, if this didn't pick up, are there other partners that you're looking for that could take on this partnership?
John, stay here.
Yeah. Yes. In fact, we're in tender right now, so that we've got to be sort of quite careful about how we describe these partners. The Careers Enterprise Company are actually a sponsor. They're not the delivery company. They're sort of above us in this, providing the money, or at least half the money. We then subcontract our piece of money and their money to local delivery partners to then deliver this service as subcontractors. And right now we are procuring the new growth service, within which is the new skills brokerage, within which is this component, the CEC contract to do outreach to schools. So we are indeed in procurement now and have some very exciting bids to consider that have got both the bids we're looking at have got some very exciting methodologies and ways forward.
Okay, I don't have anybody else wishing to speak. Is it your wish we move to the recommendations? If so, could I have a proposer and a seconder, please? Right, proposer, please. Councillor Niche, seconder, please. Councillor Edbury, I think. Thank you. Did I get that right? They were flashing around like British business here. You've got a proposer and a seconder, Dame, have you? All right. Do you want to have anybody wishing to abstain or vote against? No, so this consensus opinion, that's fine. I think we can move on, yeah?
Okay. Thanks,
Thank you. No, right, I've turned over 2 pages, that's no good, is it? Right, okay, we're going to go to 2.3 now, yeah? No, 2.4. So, 2.4, can I ask Alan Downton if he'll introduce the report, please? Is that you?
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Chair. Let me just take you through the Integrated Business and Skills Evaluation Programme. The CPCA Business and Skills Directorate currently has a number of budgets that include insight as well as monitoring and evaluation as cost elements within their expenditure. We're looking at consolidating those into one particular NTF budget line. This is to cover a number of different elements, COVID-19, and that's building on the work that we've undertaken with Greater Cambridge Partnership recently. It'll also allow us to refresh the local industrial strategy and the skills and sector strategies later on. We want to do some work around the Growth Observatory to identify scale-ups and high-growth clients for the Business Growth Service. We also want to consolidate to evaluate a number of historic completed LGF programs, and obviously some ongoing work into looking into the skills arena, particularly around workforce skills and adult education. If I can just draw your attention to table 2 under 7.1, that's the particular area for the skills committee, and the paper proposes development of funds from the current budget in tables 1 and 2 into a new consolidated budget line. The outcomes are that we want to commission through a procurement exercise a specialist support, and the outputs will be a detailed report published in September 20, followed by an update refresh of the recovery status in April 21. Thank you.
Thank you. Members? I don't see anybody wishing to speak, do I? Okay, can I move to the recommendation then? Can I have a proposer and a seconder for the recommendation? Proposer, Councillor Niche and David Ambrose Smith. Yeah? All happy? Any dissension? No, I think we're probably there then. You can come again.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Must have been a very good report. Right, okay. So I'm now going to go to 2.5, aren't I? Is that right, Tamar? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That's also you, I think, isn't it?
It is.
Okay. Well, go ahead, Alan, then.
Okay. This is the corporate governance for the new growth company. On the 27th of November 2019, the CPCA board endorsed the Business Growth Service outline business case and agreed to the establishment of the Business Growth Management Company, initially to be wholly owned subsidiary of Angle Holdings Limited. The plan is that the CPCA needs to set up and incorporate a growth company by the end of August in advance of the Business Growth Service going live in early October. A plan is now afoot that we will be bringing a full business case to your good selves and the business board and CA boards in September 20. The business case, this report is also supported by a business case for establishing growth company in Appendix 1 and a business plan in Appendix 2. And if I could just draw your attention to a couple of other things, the directors of the growth company will consist of an independent chairperson that will be recruited following an open and transparent recruitment process, the deputy chief officer of the business board and the chief finance officer. And then the business growth service, by the way, is a 3-year contract spread over 4 financial years.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very succinct again. Thank you very much. Any questions? I don't see anybody indicating. Can I have a proposer then, please? We'll move forward. Councillor Wilson.
Sorry, Chair. I have got a question. I was trying to find my way around the site. Forgive me, Chair. Forgive me.
No. Okay. I'll ask for I've got a proposer and a seconder, I think. Okay.
No, Chair. I had a question.
Okay, I'll let you talk in a minute.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I had a question. I wasn't proposing or seconding.
All right. Okay. You're a bit slow. Okay. So, ladies first, then, please. Councillor Wilson, you were first.
Yeah, I had a comment in that I started reading this paper and I had no idea what Angle Holdings was, and it would have been really helpful if that had been explained up front. And it's only when I got to the end of the paper on the organogram that I realised that it was a subsidiary of the combined authority, the CPCA. My second question, my second point, is how confident are we about this EU funding, given where we are at the moment with the EU? And those are my questions, really.
Thank you very much. I'll ask John just to answer that point.
Yeah.
Thanks, Alan. Thank you, Chair. Councillor Wilson. Very confident. There are 3 strands of the European funding that add up to 7 mil. There's 2.5 ish from the ESF, so that's skills stuff, and that would co-fund the skills brokerage. And then there are 2 lumps for the FDI service and the growth coaching service from ERDF. The ESF has been confirmed, and we're through, and we're in the process of contracting that. The ERDF was held up by COVID because our proposal had been approved at stage 1 and was about to go through when everyone in the ERDF team got transferred into COVID. They've just been transferred back. Our proposal is now being re-evaluated, and we're told that there are no problems with it at all. They've asked us for a lot of extra detail, which we've provided. So we're expecting in the next week or 2 that money will be confirmed. ERDF money and ESF money shouldn't be confused too much with Brexit. They're not particularly related, believe it or not. There's still a lot of money swishing around in the system still to be allocated. And the Treasury has underwritten it. So the money itself is there and it's safe in the Treasury, and our applications are now progressing properly after a little bit of a hiccup, and we're entirely comfortable that we will have contracts within the next couple of months, and we'll have letters telling us that we've been approved and going into contract probably within the next couple of weeks.
I thought the ERF was a lorry, a bit before your time. ERF and Foden were a good lorry. Okay, did that answer your question, Councillor Wilson? Because you've still got your hand up.
On the, I'd just like to reiterate the point about the information, and because some of the acronyms were explained quite late on in the document as well. And I have trouble reading from the screen. I like paper because I've got a sight problem, and I find it very difficult to search forward and backwards to find explanations of acronyms when they're not provided up front, and the detail of Angle Holding. So I did find it quite a difficult paper to read because of that. But that's just a point. It's not a question about the content of the paper.
Apologies, Councillor Wilson, and I'll note that going forward, so apologies.
You're not alone, because I was on the board of Anglia Holdings and didn't even know I was on there, let alone what it was, until somebody told me I've got an interest and had to resign. So I do sympathise with that. David Ambrose-Smith, you said you got a question, mate?
No question.
Yeah,
no question.
I think it was, sorry, Chair,
yeah.
It's me.
Yeah, you. Yes, sorry, did I get the wrong David?
Wrong, David rather than David. My question is about the makeup of, oddly enough, it links onto what you just said, Chair. It's about the makeup of growth company as opposed to who's on Angle Holdings. And the membership of the board would be useful to see, as would to know who the independent director is, particularly if it's not someone who's on one of the other bits of Angle Holdings, which would also be, I think, not very independent. So I'd really quite like to see what the makeup of that board is, and equally a bit more detail on the business case, because it seems like a lot of money is going in early, if I understand it correctly, but not being spent, and yet the spending seems to take place over the course of the 4 years. So those are my 2 questions, really. I suspect they would require detail at a later date, but it'd be good if Fiona or John could help through that.
Anybody want to answer that one?
I'll hand you over to John, please.
You're passing the book.
So, yeah, I mean, this is really a vehicle for handling the money to allow us to procure. The cash flow is quite tortuous because we've assembled this 19 million from different pots. They've all got to be spent at different times. So the CPCA's money doesn't seem to be spent very quickly, but that's because we have to spend other people's money earlier because of the deadlines on it. So that makes the cash flow look very odd. So apologies for that. In terms of the directors, and I'll ask Rochelle to confirm this, because although, like Councillor Holditch, I believe I'm one, and I think, in fact, I think it's Brian, isn't it? It's Brian Highland, Rochelle.
Yeah.
And Brian Highland, and Chief Finance Officer, that's John Alsop, and then the independent will be recruited after an open and transparent recruitment process. So that person hasn't been appointed yet, Councillor Davey, but we will certainly bring details once that person is selected.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Rochelle. Thank you, John.
Okay. What would we do without her, eh? Okay. I haven't got anybody else indicated. Can I have a proposer and seconder then, please, there? Councillor Seaton, proposing. You have a seconder, please? Councillor Niche. Okay. Do you have anybody against? I'll take that as unanimous then. Thank you very much for that. You are being good this afternoon. Okay. So.
Sorry, Chair. I'd like to abstain on that one, if possible.
I think, can we accept that, Rochelle? He ought to come in sooner.
Yeah. So if let's go for the vote then, Councillor Holditch. If there's going to be one abstain.
Have we better call them out then?
Yes, please.
Right. Councillor David Ambrose Smith, are you for?
For.
Mike Davey.
Abstain, Chair.
Okay. Liz Every.
For.
John Niche.
For.
Chris Slayton.
For.
Elaine Wilson.
For.
Councillor John Holditch. For. That means we're not quite unanimous. We have everybody voting for with one abstention. Okay. Thank you very much then. Okay. I turned over too soon. I think I'm going now to budget performance, am I?
No, you're on 3.1, Employment and Skills Board update, Councillor Holditch.
Oh, yes, so I am. Yes, you're right. Okay. Right. We've received a question on this. So, Tamar?
So the question is at 5.4 in the report, are there any further developments in the identification of a member of the ESB from the agri-tech sector?
And the response to that is discussions with the potential agri-tech sector member are underway, and an update will be provided to reflect the developments of those discussions as applicable. Okay. So Fiona, I think we're wanting your report.
Thank you, Chair. Just a brief report on the activity with the Employment and Skills Board. It has been noted previously that the Skills Committee have asked why we have so many boards and committees and the connectivity to all of those. And so we've been aligning the efforts of all of our boards. And so we have put a paper to the Business Board to ask for a member of the Business Board to be nominated to become the chair of the Employment and Skills Board. So it shows the connectivity there to that board. And I'm very lucky to say that the Business Board have put forward a nomination of Al Kingsley, who has an extensive background in the education sector, as well as being a leading employer in the area. So we're very, very fortunate to have him, and I've had a number of meetings with him in terms of driving forward the employment and skills agenda due to all the changes that's happening in the marketplace. So the recommendation to the board is that to note the Employment and Skills Board and also note the appointment of the new chair as well. And it also is to show how our Employment and Skills Board are responding to the COVID-19 crisis.
Good decision on Al. It's very, very good. Any questions of members? Are you happy to recommend? Do I have a mover, please? Proposer, please. Councillor Nice, seconder. Councillor Every. Was it? Were you? It's gone down quick. Councillor Every, did you second?
Yes, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Do I have any abstentions or objections? Okay, I think we can approve that unanimously. Thank you very much. So now I'm going to 3-2 and ask for Vanessa Ainsworth, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, Board. Very short paper today, really just to provide you with an update on the current finances and to note the May budget and performance monitoring update. That's it from me, so any questions?
That is short.
It's short today.
I think we ought to be worried now. Okay. Any questions? All right. No questions then. Do I have a proposer? Proposer, please. Councillor Every, seconder. David Ambrose Smith, thank you very much. Are all happy? Do you have any objections or abstentions? No, so that's unanimous. Thank you very much. I think that concludes our meeting today, isn't it? Next one's the 14th of September. Is that quite correct? Am I happy, Rochelle and Tamar? We have done it all right?
Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you all for your attendance.
Thanks, Chair.
Chair.
Go safely. Thank you very much.
Chair. Have a good summer.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.